Ahsoka is coming out in 1 month's time, and I truly believe that it's the most important series in Star Wars' entire history, and its success or failure will determine Star Wars' relevancy over the next decade. So quite a lot of pressure, eh? Ahsoka has got to be at least as good as The Mandalorian Season 1 or 2, and if it's anything less than a brilliant series, I feel that the Star Wars franchise will be solidified as mediocre, with it creatively running out of steam, like Indiana Jones or Terminator. There is only so long a once beloved franchise can live off the nostalgia that people had for its original movies. And I believe we are at that pivotal point with Star Wars, where it is at risk of losing its once omnipresent cultural significance. The Ahsoka series has the burden of raising the standard of Star Wars shows, effectively being the trailer for Dave Filoni's Star Wars movie, and bringing fan favourites such as Ahsoka and Thrawn from animation and the expanded universe to the centre of mainstream Star Wars. Now, we've all got different views on where Star Wars is at, and I think that currently there are 3 main battling opinions from Star Wars fans. So let's look at these views and how the Ahsoka series will affect the different sections of the fanbase. The first opinion, which is the most widespread, at least on social media, goes something like this: Star Wars is dead. Kathleen Kennedy and Disney have ruined it, and there's no coming back from the dreadful sequel trilogy. And for these people, the Ahsoka show probably can't bring them back into loving Star Wars as much as they used to. But like The Mandalorian did, it could bring them some belief that Star Wars might get back on track. The second opinion is somewhat more positive and goes something like this: some Star Wars shows are good, but others are really disappointing, like Kenobi and the Book of Boba Fett. And despite not loving the sequels, they're still interested in future films and shows, taking a pick-and-mix approach, liking some Star Wars content, but not caring about the rest. For these fans, Star Wars can still be a big franchise if the Ahsoka show delivers and sets up Filoni's film well. If the series isn't up to scratch, then apathy towards Star Wars will absolutely set in. And finally, the opinion I hear less from the internet, but more from real-world conversations, is that Star Wars is fine. The sequels were fine, and without being blown away by recent Star Wars films and shows, they're still happy with Star Wars' current trajectory. So why is the Ahsoka show so key to each of these fan groups? Well, I believe there's 3 key reasons. Number 1, the fluctuating quality of Star Wars shows. Like the MCU, Star Wars has been putting out way too many shows on Disney+. 8 shows in 4 years, in fact. But differentiating from Marvel, some of the Star Wars shows have been fantastic. We had a phenomenal start with Mando Season 1, and then Season 2 ended with Luke Skywalker saving Din Djarin and co. And this was probably the most excited Star Wars fans have been in the Disney Star Wars era. Then we had the mediocre phase, with the Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi, which both managed to take fan favourite characters from the originals and prequels and made them worse. On the animated show front, we've had Clone Wars Season 7, in which Ahsoka was front and centre, The Bad Batch, Tales of the Jedi, and Visions, all of which were really good, but the animated shows don't appeal to a large audience, as much as the live action shows do. And then we had Andor, which in my opinion is by far the best Star Wars we've had, show or film, in a very long time. The problem is, not many watched it. Despite now getting a deserved uptick in viewership figures, Andor had only half the viewers that Kenobi and the Book of Boba Fett did. Potentially because of the sour taste many felt towards Star Wars shows after the Kenobi show, which aired just 3 months before Andor. Or perhaps because Andor was a side character in a spin-off film, and has little to no name recognition. And then we had Mando Season 3, which was good in parts, but was more in line with the Book of Boba Fett than Andor in terms of storytelling and quality. So for the majority of people, the last few shows they've seen have been the Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, and The Mandalorian Season 3. And if Ahsoka is similar to these 3 shows, by being good in parts but overall not great, then that will cement Star Wars as a quantity over quality franchise. Ahsoka has to break past this mediocrity and reach back to the excitement levels of The Mandalorian Season 2 finale, getting Star Wars fans to speculate wildly about what will happen next, and get excited for a potential Season 2, and the Mandoverse film that Dave Filoni is working on, which segues us very nicely onto the second reason why the Ahsoka show is so important. Number 2. The Filoni Movie. Ahsoka and her journey in the series will not only be playing a major part in future Star Wars shows, but it's absolutely fundamental to setting up the recently announced Dave Filoni film, probably coming out in 3 to 5 years. Now yes, of course, we have to take this announcement that was made at Star Wars Celebration with a grain of salt, as around 92% of announced Star Wars films don't get past the pre-production stage. But let's say that Filoni's film does make it to theatres. Ahsoka, Thrawn, and most likely other characters introduced in the show will be key players in Filoni's movie. The official synopsis for the film from StarWars.com is as follows. Dave Filoni will focus on the New Republic and close out the interconnected stories told in The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and other Disney Plus series. We know that Grand Admiral Thrawn will most likely be the Thanos big bad in this movie, and we know that Ahsoka will be in it too. Ahsoka is the first live action show that Filoni has written every episode for, and we know that he is also directing at least 2 of the 8 episodes. So this is a real make or break moment for Filoni. From producing the Star Wars Clone Wars animated film, then the Clone Wars TV show, followed by Rebels, and a few episodes in The Mandalorian, Filoni has delivered some brilliant Star Wars. But Ahsoka will serve as a real indication into what his movie will be like. If the show is great, with Ahsoka becoming an iconic character to general audiences, and Thrawn has a good introduction, then the excitement for his film will be incredible. Ahsoka is almost like a trailer for the Filoni movie, and will significantly contribute to its initial hype. The Ahsoka show has the lofty task of moving Ahsoka and Thrawn from the minds of animated and expanded universe hardcore Star Wars fans into the consciousness of the general public. The third reason why I believe that the Ahsoka show is so important is because it's the first live-action Star Wars series to take a fan-favourite character from the Clone Wars and Rebels TV show era. The group of fans who grew up on this era of Star Wars is perhaps the last section of Star Wars fans who have been up to now rather underestimated, or at least undermarketed to. The Mandalorian evoked the feel of the original trilogy, and the Book of Boba Fett took a beloved character from the OT as well. The Kenobi show starred Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan and about 20 seconds of Hayden Christensen and Liam Neeson. So the originals and the prequels have had some attention when it comes to Star Wars shows. But the titular character Ahsoka is a fan favourite for a different set of Star Wars fans. Ahsoka features in 76 out of the 133 episodes in the Clone Wars, and she's also in a lot of Star Wars Rebels. Now these 2 shows were aired for over a decade, between 2008 and 2020. There was also Tales of the Jedi, in which 3 out of its 6 episodes were entirely about Ahsoka. I say all of this to represent how big of a part Ahsoka played for millions of young Star Wars fans, born in the late 90s and onwards. She is such a big and well-loved character for those under 30, and is perhaps equivalent to Princess Leia or even Luke for the OT fans. And if you're looking on a pessimistic side, these fans are the last ones who haven't been let down by Disney Star Wars. OT fans saw Han Solo divorced and killed in Episode 7. They saw Luke become a hermit who died in Episode 8, and Leia become a failed parent who died in Episode 9. And Darth Vader's sacrifice was ultimately undone as the First Order took over the galaxy a few decades after his death, and then Palpatine came back as well. So it's probably fair to say that the OT fans who stayed Star Wars fans after the prequels are in large now checked out, leaving the prequel, and more specifically the Clone Wars and Rebels fans, as the last bankable audience for Disney Star Wars. If the Ahsoka show fails to deliver for these fans, then Star Wars would maybe lose another substantial group of fans. But then on the optimistic side, if Ahsoka is in fact good, as I really hope it will be, then those who have watched her grow from a 14-year-old Padawan to a 45-year-old experienced leader may help to reinvigorate Star Wars as a cultural heavyweight that it used to be. Whether Ahsoka is a great show, on par with Clone Wars Season 7, or whether it's more like Kenobi, one thing is certain: it's going to have a big effect on the state of Star Wars going forward. I for one am positively optimistic about the Ahsoka series. And from fantastic episodes in Clone Wars, Rebels, and The Mandalorian, Dave Filoni has given me some great Star Wars moments. And let's hope for many more to come. Now I would like to know, what do you think? Is Ahsoka a little too late to save Star Wars? Or could it be a real turning point? Whatever you believe, let me know in the comments below. If you're new here, then perhaps consider subscribing to Film Club. I review all the major films and shows, and will be reviewing all 8 episodes of Ahsoka upon its release in August. Thank you for watching, and see you again.